All it took was one whisper, and suddenly she was alone. Not exiled, not imprisoned, just erased. At first, nothing seemed different. The same narrow dirt paths wound between crooked timber houses. Smoke still curled from chimneys. Church bells still rang, slow and heavy, over the village. But something had shifted. People stopped meeting her eyes. Conversations died the moment she stepped closer, and when she passed by. Mothers pulled their children just a little tighter, as if something invisible followed her, something contagious. Her name was Anna, or at least, that's what they used to call her, before the whisper. No one remembered exactly where it started. These things never have a clear beginning. Maybe it was the baker's wife, who swore the milk soured the moment Anna touched the bucket, or the farmer who lost 2 goats in a single night and needed someone, anyone, to blame. Or maybe it was just easier this way, because medieval life was brutal. Harvests failed, children died, disease came without warning and left without explanation, and people needed answers, even if they had to invent them. So the whisper spread. She's different. I heard she walks alone at night. They say she talks to herself. Each sentence small, harmless on its own, but together, they built something far more dangerous than any weapon: isolation. At first, Anna tried to ignore it. She still went to the well each morning, lowering her bucket into the cold, dark water. She still walked past the church, head bowed, hands clasped as if prayer alone could keep her anchored to the world she was slowly losing. But the world was already pulling away. No one would stand beside her in line. No one would trade bread or salt. Even the priest, the man who once blessed her home, now hesitated before speaking to her. And in medieval Europe, that hesitation meant everything. Because the church wasn't just faith, it was authority, truth, judgment. If doubt reached the priest, it wouldn't stay quiet for long. Days turned into weeks. The silence around her grew louder, more deliberate, more suffocating. Until one night, something changed. A storm rolled in without warning. Thunder cracked open the sky, and rain slammed against the rooftops like 1,000 fists. Inside their homes, villagers whispered prayers. And then, lightning struck. A barn caught fire at the edge of the village, flames tearing through dry wood like it had been waiting for this moment. By morning, it was gone, reduced to blackened bones and ash. No one saw how it started. No one knew why. But they didn't need to, because by then, the whisper had already chosen its target: Anna. That morning, for the first time, someone said it out loud, not quietly, not carefully, but in front of others. She's a witch. And just like that, the whisper became truth. No evidence, no proof, just fear, given a name. From that moment on, Anna wasn't just alone. She was dangerous. People began to watch her, not openly, but always. Every movement, every glance, every breath she took became something to interpret. When she stumbled, it meant guilt. When she stayed silent, it meant secrets. When she cried, it meant nothing at all. Because by then, she wasn't a person anymore. She was a story. And stories, in medieval times, had a way of ending badly. But here's the part they never tell you. The accusation was only the beginning, because in a world where fear ruled over reason, being called a witch didn't just isolate you. It set something in motion, something far worse than loneliness, something that no one, once accused, ever truly escaped from. And Anna was about to learn just how far that would go. They came for her at dawn, not soldiers, not executioners, neighbors, men she had known since childhood, women who once borrowed her bread, faces that used to feel familiar, now hardened into something distant, something unrecognizable. No one shouted, no one needed to. The silence said everything. Anna didn't resist, because by then, resistance didn't matter. Once the word witch had been spoken out loud, her fate was no longer hers to control. They led her through the village slowly, deliberately, so everyone could see. Doors creaked open just enough for eyes to peek through. Children were pulled back into shadows. And above it all, the church bell rang, not in celebration, but in warning. Because this wasn't just punishment, it was a message. By midday, she stood inside a cold stone room beneath the church. The air smelled of damp earth and old iron. Light barely reached the corners, and somewhere in the distance, someone was screaming. Not loudly, just enough to remind her what came next. Across from her stood a man in dark robes, an inquisitor, sent not just to judge her, but to extract the truth, or rather, the truth they already believed. "Confess," he said calmly. "Confess, and your soul may yet be saved." It sounded merciful, almost kind, but Anna quickly understood the trap, because in these trials there were only two endings: confession or suffering. And confession didn't mean freedom. It only meant a different kind of death. At first, she denied everything. "I'm not a witch." Her voice trembled, but it held. She spoke of her life, her work, her faith. But the more she insisted, the less it mattered. Because the trial wasn't about proving guilt. It was about confirming it. They asked her impossible questions. "Who taught you witchcraft? Which demon do you serve? How many have you cursed?" Each answer she gave only tightened the net. When she said, "No one," they called her a liar. When she said, "Nothing," they called her deceitful. Silence was guilt. Speech was guilt. There was no way out. And then the methods changed. They brought instruments into the room, cold, metallic, purposeful, not immediately violent, not at first, because medieval interrogations weren't designed to break the body quickly. They were designed to break the mind. Hours stretched into something shapeless. Sleep was taken from her. Food became scarce. Time lost all meaning. And slowly, something inside her began to crack. Not because she was weak, but because no one could survive that kind of isolation forever. Days later, when they asked again, her answer was different. Yes, just one word, barely a whisper, but it was enough. The room shifted. The tension dissolved into quiet satisfaction. Because they had what they wanted. A confession. It didn't matter that it wasn't true. It didn't matter that it was forced. On paper, it was everything. They wrote it down carefully. Every detail expanded, shaped, twisted into something that fit their story. She named no real names, so they gave her names. She described no rituals, so they invented them. By the end, Anna's confession had become something unrecognizable. A monster, written in her own voice. And then came the final step, the one the entire village had been waiting for. They brought her back outside, to the same people who once avoided her gaze, and now couldn't look away. A wooden post stood in the center, surrounded by stacked logs. The air was thick, not just with smoke, but with anticipation, because this wasn't just execution, it was closure. Proof that the fear had been justified, that the whisper had been right all along. Anna looked out at the crowd one last time, searching for something, a familiar face, a moment of doubt, anything. But there was nothing, only distance, only certainty, only the final form of loneliness, being surrounded by people who had already decided you no longer belonged among them. The fire was lit, slow at first, then hungry, climbing, consuming. And as the flames rose higher, something strange happened. The fear didn't disappear. It didn't end with her. Because the truth is, it never does. In villages like this, in times like these, there was always another whisper, another name, another person who would wake up one day and realize they were completely alone. Because in medieval times, being accused of being a witch was never really about magic. It was about fear, and fear always needs someone to burn.